Okay, we are live. Anton Krupicka, welcome to the Single Track Podcast.
Thanks, Finn. Appreciate you asking me to come on.
So maybe we can start here. You did Leadville about 6 months ago, and as a fan of the sport, I was stoked because it's great to see you racing again. And I'm wondering, now that you're back in it, you're presumably healthy. Are you following the sport? Like, are you tuned back in? Like, is running your first love, or are all these other things like biking and skiing and climbing that you've taken up, have those come back and returned and you're balancing it all?
Oh, I mean, those other things are a huge part of my life. Running isn't running hasn't changed for me since running Leadville in August, I guess. You know, it's still really touch and go in terms of maintaining my running health. I was actually had a pretty good training block going November and December, and was starting to think about. I mean, I was actually thinking like, oh, maybe I should do Black Canyon or even canyons. Just not even I. If I were able to race into Western states, well, I don't know. That's a whole nother side thing. Point being, running was going well, and then the last 2 months, my heel kind of flared up, and I wasn't able to do. I was still able to run, but just not as much and not as consistently, and certainly not vertical. But the past couple of weeks, it's taken a turn for the better again. So it's going to be the story for the rest of my life. So running will never be a 100% focus in my life again, ever. And it wasn't at all going into Leadville either, like not even close. It was just kind of like, I think I'm fit enough and get a couple long runs in and away we go, So yeah.
Just going off on a tangent for a second there. Are you saying that there is an outside chance that you could line up for a race like Canyons at the end of April and potentially race your way into states?
No,
And
not anymore. Not anymore. Not that race specifically. It's about 6-7 weeks away.
yeah,
There's a couple bike objectives between now and then that I'm going to be pursuing that will be taking up my time, I guess. I would Now I'm just like kind of grateful and hopeful that, oh, maybe there's something I could do in the first half of the summer that requires extensive foot travel, Whereas for the past couple of months, I've been kind of bummed. Like, oh god, am I only going to be biking this summer? But yeah, I won't be racing the Canyon 100K. No.
okay, cool. Well, I think one of the first places I want to take this conversation is the fact that you are a multi-sport athlete, which I find fascinating and cool because a lot of folks in the sport, myself included, were incredibly one-dimensional. It's like the running equivalent of not studying abroad or going to see another country and get continuing education to see other possibilities. But you've done, like I said, you've done climbing, you've done biking, all of it is a part of your life. What are some of the things that you appreciate about those other sports that you think our sport might be missing?
Well, it's funny. I guess what I don't get from running is what is so attractive about it too, and that is that it is so pure and elemental. It's super simple. Ultras get a little more. There's more X factors. Like it gets a little more engaging and dynamic and interesting. But sports like climbing, cycling, and skiing, they're just endemically like super dynamic, technical. There's a lot to learn in all of them. They're technique based. Biking not so much, but in cycling, like there is the bike, which is a whole nother
Right.
like running doesn't have that. I know there's sneakerheads and that kind of shit, but like but like sneakers, like shoes are disposable. They're not a durable good. You just like you wear them for a month, you pound them on the ground, you throw them out. With a bicycle, there's a bike that can last for decades. That's beside the point. But so I'm saying it's weird because what I really like about running is how simple it is, but that's also lends itself to this one dimensionality that ends up not being very engaging if that's all you're doing. And I mean, I don't want to like shit on running though. Like I spent 2 decades basically only running. And obviously loved it, still love it, but I could never have that monomaniacal focus on it again. I would be bored. I would feel very just like unfulfilled, I guess is the word. It doesn't, I get like any period of time where, so like this last week, it was sub-zero here in Boulder for like the entire week. So I only ran all week, and I was like, dang, if this was my life, this is all I ever did anymore, it would, yeah, it wouldn't feel, I guess, yeah, well-rounded. It wouldn't feel full. I don't know. So that's,
Like, what
but
are
I love
some,
it. I love running. I want to be clear about that. So
how do I phrase this? I think you said in previous interviews that you never really identified with the ultra running scene, despite the fact that you've been one of like the avatars for the sport. And so, can you elaborate on that? Like, did you find yourself in other sports?
no, definitely not. I mean, became a runner when I was 11 years old, and but I always felt like an underdog and an outsider, and definitely felt that way when I entered the ultra world too.
Really?
Um, yeah, because I was totally unknown, and then I was like completely, like immediately at the top of the sport. Um, and I had never had any success in running before that,
Hmm.
so I totally felt like an underdog outsider. And I definitely had this kind of, oh, I don't know. I mean, I was 23, 22 that summer. And so it's just sort of this like, oh, what are these people like jogging around in the woods, like, it's like, what's this all about kind of. So it was, and then I think, I'm not sure why. So like when I was in college, there was this whole, I went to Colorado College in Colorado
Yeah. Yeah.
Springs, and there was this. It's like a really like outdoorsy school. Um, like there's a lot of people, say like on the North Face team who went to CC, climbers, skiers, that kind of thing, and so there's this whole faction on campus of like look how outdoorsy I can be. Like I'll wear my Carhartts to class, and I'll have my Nalgene clipped to my belt, and wear my chacos, that kind of thing. And I just always like I wanted to do the outdoor things. Like I started climbing my freshman year at CC, um, and actually bought a bike that year too. But I never identified with that kind of like looking the part of it. Like I just and and it was so. I'm only bringing this up because in the ultra running world, um, I kind of always felt the same way. Like I thought the activity itself was really cool, but I just never really identified with the scene around it. Does that make any sense? I don't
That does.
know.
Should we implicate any specific elements of the scene, or should we move on?
I think we should probably move on. I don't want to be too much of a dick.
Well,
It's just, I don't know. It probably comes back to what you were saying about having a highly tuned sense for unoriginality. Like it gets like the people kind of latching on the tropes gets exhausting, I guess, but whatever.
I want to come back to this philosophically later in the conversation, but I think the reason I also bring it up is because I had you pinned as this person who is also obsessed about the sport, like logging on to I Run Far every day and reading other
Uh,
folks like blog reports and stuff.
yeah, for sure. 10, 20 years ago, I was
Okay.
not the last,
Okay.
yeah, the last decade, not as much. Definitely not the last 5 years, but from like 1995 to like 2010, absolutely.
Okay.
Like obsessive. Like I was the ultimate. Yeah, not the ultimate. There's people who are, but I was very tuned in. Like when I was in college, my homepage on my internet browser was letsrun.com. I don't know
Oh
if you're
yeah.
familiar with that site,
Yeah.
but like I mean, I was heavily into like the track and like marathon world too, as a fan.
Okay.
So, but it's just, yeah, the last 5 to 10 years, just not as, I became way more interested in other stuff, and then also when you're not able to run, it's really hard to care about that stuff, I think. But yeah.
Going back to like the cycling world or the climbing world, and given that you're a relatively new entrant there, are there any athletes that influence you right now that you're looking up to, or you're like from like an artistic
Oh,
standpoint or from like a performance standpoint, really any realm?
yeah. So I guess this is with the caveat that I definitely have athletes in those realms that get me excited about what they're doing. It's like, like it seems like they have the right mindset and they're going about this the right way. but I haven't for the past 15 years. Like I don't have heroes anymore, you know. I'm just not like I'm like too old now, dude. Um, like I kind of met all my heroes, and I've like been behind the curtain on most of those scenes too. So it doesn't, and you just realize that people are just people, you
Yeah.
know. Like we're all the same. We're all just kind of like trying to get through life as best we can. Like most of us aren't trying to do any harm. We're just trying to be kind. And um, so, but I mean, to answer your question more specifically, I would say, I mean, in the cycling world, of course, right now, the person to be inspired by, and I'm not immune to this, is Lachlan Morton.
I'm not
Um,
familiar.
yeah, well, his parents have a house here in Boulder, and he's here in Boulder most of the year. Or not? No, that's not true. Half the year, maybe less than half the year. His brother used to live here too, but now is in LA. But he's a professional cyclist. He rides for the U.S. Professional team, which is EF Cycling, EF Education First World Tour team. And but he has a much more. His team has allowed him to pursue like adventure style races, bikepacking races, gravel races, personal kind of FKT attempts, that sort of thing. And Lachlan just brings like a, it's not an artistic bent, although I think he has a bit of that to him. It's more just like he has a very like even keeled mindset about this stuff. And he has an ability for self-reflection that it seems like a lot of top athletes don't. Like they're very just like, I'm a robot. I execute. This is the plan, you know. Whereas Lachlan, he's out there to like have an experience, and he's able to like reflect on that experience and speak about it intelligently, you know. So that's what makes Lachlan to me kind of like relatable and inspiring. In the
Ask you
climbing
something.
world, yeah. Sorry,
I
what?
got to ask you something there.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
mentioned something really interesting. Do you think that top athletes are just born in with that robotic mentality, or do they learn that over time as like a demand of their training to become like one dimensional in their pursuit? Because
It's
that's really
both.
interesting to think that.
Yeah, it's both. It's both. You know, like so Taylor Finney is another dude who lives here in town. He's ex pro cyclist. Um, he was really at the top level, but you know, he's only like 30, 31 years old. He's pretty young, but he's retired now. And he has talked about how he was like literally trained to like regurgitate this, like you get media training to just say like the most boring shit, you know. And it's because I mean, cycling's a very traditional, professional cycling is a very traditional sport. It's a very European sport. Um, like the Italians especially is like just like you do things by the book, and this is, you know, it's very old school. It's so, you know, it's very like patriarchal too, and I don't know, kind of gross that way. But I think it's oh god, I'm not sure. It comes down to personality though, and the people who maybe aren't capable of that monk-like focus and the ability to be uh non-expressive, I guess,
Yeah.
they're going to wash out probably. You know, they're not going to reach the absolute pinnacle of a sport because they're going to be interested in other things, you know. And so yeah, I
I
mean,
mean, to,
Taylor, he retired super young, you know, and he's probably the biggest talent in American cycling of the last 20 years. But yeah.
and I think that you buck this trend for sure, but it's interesting to me that a lot of other top athletes in sport and in other sports do lack personality, which makes it interesting to me that brands want them to be the ambassadors from a marketing standpoint, and that somebody with probably more to say, more outlook on life, maybe they're more well read or they've had other influences, they might actually be from a marketing standpoint someone better to be on the poster because they can open up more.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. um, I don't really know the answer to that. I think maybe, yeah, I think you might be right. Yeah, yeah, I'm not sure where to go with that.
Putting your fan of the sport hat on again, like your 2010 hat, if putting that back on again here in 2022, what's exciting you most about the sport right now?
Oh God, dude, I have to go from a 2010 perspective. Uh,
Well, just imagining that you're like as stoked about the sport now as you were then. Like if you're
yeah. Well, see, this is unfair though, because to say that I'm not stoked about running right now. I'll give you a two-part answer. So, okay, first trying to like have the 2010 perspective. I don't know. I mean, if I was, yeah, if it was 2010 and like I was like fully in the thick of it and at the top of the game, um, I suppose I would probably be getting excited about, I don't know. I was going to bring up something about Iron Man in UTMB and how that's kind of disgusting, but um, ah, I don't know. Man. I can't do that, man. I don't know. That's a hard one for me, but I can say like what I'm excited about right now. If we view running in a more broad sense than
Let's do
simply
it.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
ultra marathon racing, uh, it's going to be kind of what I've been psyched on for the past decade, which is uh, a combination of more technical pursuits, but with running being involved. Uh, so like this past year, this dude who lives out in California, his name's Vitaly Musienko, I think. He's a climber, he's an alpinist, but he did this giant traverse in the Sierras, linking two giant traverses basically. Like the full evolution traverse and the full Palisades traverse.
Okay.
And this is hyper technical. We're talking like over 30 miles. I think it had something insane like 80K over it or something like that, but in just miles and literally miles of fifth class terrain kind of thing. And after that, he did that in August, I think. He then ended up running some 100K in California later in the fall. And he's like not like a runner. He's very much a climber, but just that idea of like combining like ultra endurance with climbing pursuits. I mean, that's a long tradition in the climbing and especially in the alpinism world of super long pushes. And so like that stuff gets me excited. Like alpine ridge traverses, big link ups, remote objectives that require an element of running to get them done in a day, car to car. And that's definitely a trend that is growing slowly in the climbing world, I would say. Optimizing more for all day, multi-day endurance in order to complete these really big objectives faster than they've ever been done before, cover more ground more quickly, that kind of thing. And that's what gets me most excited about running right now is like, because that's my background, ultra endurance running. But then, with the skill set I've developed in the past decade of climbing and scrambling, combining the two to like, I don't know, do some interesting things. Because I mean, that world it goes back to that whole, like, there's so many variables, it's so engaging. It just seems more like interesting, I guess, than like running a trail and optimizing for a race. And I mean, you're constantly like what we're all looking for. Well, I don't know. It's what I'm looking for. I'm not speaking for everybody here. Is finding that balance of like of where you're capable of doing it and you're not capable of doing it. You're like, what's going to happen, but then there's that element of uncertainty and unknown and like unpredictability that you have to factor in and kind of like hedge for. And like that's what gives you that spark of like, I mean, that's like why I was like to do Leadville again last year, is because 100 miles was unknown and unpredictable to me again. Like I was excited to like, I didn't know if I could do it. And so when you start playing in these realms where there's more variables, that it's just easier to find that optimal nexus of like ability, skill set, fitness. And, that's where flow state exists, is right on that line between holding it all together and having it all fall apart. So yeah, I find that easier to be done in the alpine realm.
I don't know the climbing world that well, but I don't know the climbing world that well, but I think one thing that interests me there is events are not the default. It's left up to like human creativity on your own versus in running.
100%.
Versus in running, the default is I'm going to put this fitness towards some sort of event. So I think that's really exciting that there could be this movement where people are opting out of the event experience and going into the wilderness and having some multi-day challenge. Do you think though that there'll be that'll be a thing, like it'll be more than, it could ever be more than just like a niche pursuit?
Well, what do you mean by more than, like, so I think what you're talking about there is like, is it ever marketable? Is it ever like, can you ever commodify it, and like, I mean, that's what you mean by that, right?
I think what I mean by that is yeah, I think yeah. Okay, yeah, let's roll with that. I do. Let's assume I mean it from like this can be marketed, this can be brought to a critical mass of people. This can change more than half of the running community's mind.
Yeah, but who cares? Like, why do you need to change half of the running community's mind? Like, if it's something that gets you stoked and gets you excited, just go fucking do it, Like,
That's a great point, but I think the way my mind works is if I believe something, I want other people to adopt that same belief and therefore to
uh,
adopt those same actions.
that's crazy. Where does that come from? Because, like, for me, I'm the exact opposite. Like, I don't care. Like, in fact, because I think it comes from me being hating being told what to do.
Yeah,
So like I never want to like tell somebody else what to do, It's like, nah, figure it out, man. Like that's where the fun is. Like that's where you're gonna have the crazy experience that you're never gonna forget.
I definitely don't mean it in like a hierarchical top down way. I mean more like I just had this amazing experience and I'm convinced that if someone else had this experience, it would be equally as life
Mm,
changing. But I at the same time there are probably some like base level things I think people should do. Like I feel like if everyone ran, for example, the world would be a better place. It'd be less violent, it'd be less greedy, all that kind of stuff. So I definitely have some like pie in the sky type beliefs that I wish everyone adopted, but yeah.
yeah, I'm just like, I totally disagree. It is funny though, because I know what you're talking about. I was not recently, but I've had this discussion before with Haley of, it's funny when like I finish a movie or a book and like I immediately go online and look for the reviews of it, like what did other people think about it? And what I'm looking for is I want my opinion to be confirmed, you know, which is fucking weird. Like why? Like it's like you want to be told that you're thinking the right thing,
Yeah.
and that you feel the correct way about something. And it sounds like that's what you're sort of saying with regard to running is like you feel really strongly about this, but you kind of have this like, I want other people to like validate that I'm feeling the right way, like that this is as meaningful as it feels to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that like when I like rack my brain for the reasons I think these things, one of them is by seeing someone else adopt something that I believe in, it like validates my existence, all that kind of stuff. But I
Mm-hmm.
definitely don't see life like a scoreboard. Like, oh,
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
I was right here, one, other person zero. But
That would be a horrible way to go through life.
totally, totally.
But, yeah.
This is a good note, dude. This is like, man, this is like the therapy session I needed. But
I don't know about
um,
that.
anyways, no, but yeah, I would definitely be lying if I said I didn't get some enjoyment from putting an idea or a belief out into the world and seeing it gain some momentum among other people. And
Yeah,
that's, yeah,
that's never been a motivation for me, I guess.
interesting.
Yeah, it's I mean, I need external, or I certainly have needed external validation in my life, because I mean, I'm a human. Like
Yeah.
that's pretty typical, pretty normal. But it's never been like, it's more of like, pat on the back for winning a race or that kind of thing. But it's never been to like, oh, you think this thing, that's the right thing to think. That's, I don't know, that, yeah,
Well,
or I've never like, I don't know, what was it? What is it? We're in 2022. So talk about like 13, 14 years ago. Basically, I guess when I started running for New Balance, and like then Born to Run came out in 2009, and the whole minimalist footwear thing really took off. And I mean, I was going around the country like giving talks about minimal footwear and that kind
yeah.
of shit. And but it was just, I was kind of doing that because I mean, I believed in it, but it was just sort of like, oh, like New Balance is psyched to send me to this, uh, this place to give a talk. What am I going to talk about? We're trying to sell some shoes, and like they're like making this shoe, they're making me this shoe that I like helped them design. I'm gonna like talk about kind of like my philosophy about why this shoe is the right shoe for me. Then.
Yeah.
Um, I wasn't trying to convert anybody at all.
You,
Like
you've never had the desire to influence people.
No. I mean, I am not immune to like wanting an audience, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Like whenever you do something creative, and for me, my biggest creative outlet is definitely writing. I want people to read my shit for
Yeah.
sure. Uh, but that's just sort of fulfilling that kind of like external validation thing. It's not me wanting them to think the same thing as me. It's more like, yeah, an exchange of ideas is always interesting.
Yeah.
It is definitely interesting to get inside other people's heads and know what they're thinking. I mean, any great literature, I guess that's what's going on actually, now that I think
Yeah.
about it, is that you're reading something, you're able to identify with it in some kind of fundamental deep way. You're like, oh, that's it. He got it. He nailed it, or she nailed it, whoever, and but I never uh the only influencing that I do with intention is the stuff that I'm paid to do,
Yeah.
like it's an exchange. It's transactional.
Even and I'm just like, I'm going through my mind again to think of other, I guess I'm going through some post rationalization here, but like, what about like, oh, I just came across this technology that's going to make people's lives easier, or like this running form or this formula for, doing better at races, like no interest in sharing like best practices and stuff like that? Or just like things that have made life easier and more enjoyable for you?
Yeah, this is so weird. Now you're like making me question myself because like I'm a sociopath or something, because I really like I
Dude,
don't
you made me
care.
question myself.
Like I don't care at all about, like, if people ask me, especially if it's like face to face, one on one, I'm happy to
Yeah.
dispense advice. But I've never been like, I have the answer and here it is. Like that's just that's never occurred to me, I guess,
Well, dude,
because I guess I'm always just so confused and uncertain about the world, that I rarely feel like I have any authority to like dispense advice.
my life quote is strong opinions loosely held, but dude, you made me rethink all my stuff too. This is awesome. This is why I have conversations with people, because yeah, shit, I'm gonna not sleep well tonight. um, okay, since we're on the influence front, one thing, just as a fan of yours and of the sport, I've always been curious, what does a day in the life look for you? And I know that's like a super basic question, but given that you
Yeah.
were one of the first athletes to ever do this full time, and there's been all sorts of debate in the community of like, what do you do as a full-time runner? And do you have enough things to do in the day? I'm just fascinated because I know you're also like way into reading and writing. And so, yeah,
Mhm.
I'm rambling, but what do you do?
Oh god, dude. It's super variable, and I'm not actually that good with that. I've always kind of thought that uh I would prefer the structure of a job where someone's just telling me what to do, and I clock in and clock out, and then I can do my shit on my own time.
Yeah.
But that, now I say that out loud, like it kind of makes me nauseous to think about that. Um, but my days, they vary a lot. I mean, I guess probably the easiest way would be to sort of describe today, because
Yeah.
it's a typical day, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I get up super early, um, usually by 5 a.m. In the summers, even earlier. But I go to bed early too. I was up. I always start with coffee and reading, because my brain works best in the morning. Like if I'm going to get something out of a book, it's got to happen in the first like couple hours of the day. Um, so and then I was out the door, ran 10 miles, um, came back, had breakfast, did something like small on the bike, and but then I got out and rode my bike out to El Dorado Canyon to meet my buddy to go climbing. Um, Eldo's like it's 10 miles away. We climbed for less than 3 hours, couple routes, rode back, had lunch, then was like on the computer. Got back to the house probably 2 o'clock, 2:30, 2:30. So then I was on the computer for 2 hours. Right now I'm working on, just a couple weeks ago, Haley and I were out in Southern California on this bike tour, and I'm writing up a piece for a sponsor about that, because this sponsor makes an app, Ride with GPS. That's a navigation app.
Yeah.
So that's going to end up being a few thousand words because I'm wordy. And then I was answering emails, and now I'm talking to you. And like after this, have dinner, chill out, and that'll be the day. And that's pretty typical. Some days it's like sun up to sundown, I'm on the bike and nothing else gets done. Other days, maybe I only go for a run and then I have more time to get this other stuff done that I need to be doing. But like, like I could bang out a whole like writing piece for a sponsor, or get back to like all the people in the emails, or, fritter away half an hour on YouTube, or maybe be like, I don't know, I'm constantly working on bike stuff too, just because I'm an aspiring bike mechanic. So yeah, or like as a professional athlete, like you have a photo shoot, or often have Zoom calls. Like I work on design stuff for a couple different sponsors, and you're always coordinating Zoom calls and back and forth on that, and or writing emails for all that stuff too. So I don't know. I feel super busy personally, but at the same time, I have almost complete control over my time. So it's this tough balance of like getting all of your work done, but also trying to get done all the stuff that you want to do because you feel like that's why I'm living this lifestyle, so that I can have this autonomy over my life. So yeah.
Well, it sounds like the answer to this next question is yes, but you said a couple times on a couple other podcasts that you weren't willing to compromise your passions for a traditional career. And I'm curious if you think you're still in alignment with those beliefs today, like if you're happy with what you're doing on a day-to-day basis.
Oh man, that is like the most existential question. Am I happy? Nah. I ask myself that every day, Finn. Like almost every day.
What was the answer today?
I woke up in a bad mood, full of doubts. But then, you spend a couple, 3 hours like climbing. It's an incredible spring day here today. It was like 60 degrees, full sun, like just ridiculous. So nice. That was a huge mood boost. And I was like, so yeah, then you're like, yeah, I'm on the right path. I'm like, because I'm able to do that. I'm like able to get out in the middle of the day and do something that is immensely personally fulfilling, to balance out doing the other stuff I don't want to be doing, So just having that flexibility in my life is invaluable, I guess. But at the same time, I struggle with feeling like I'm giving back in some way, like adding to the world in a meaningful and productive way. And a big part of that for me that's tough is it's not my basic nature to be a social animal. Like I don't know, I think for a long time it really manifested as being like self-centered, but then now I just realize like it's not like some people have that energy of like wanting to be around other people, wanting to, I don't know, they're outgoing, they're extroverted, and I'm introverted. And so that the whole giving back thing, it seems like it's like really at odds with my personality. And that's my big, when I can figure out how to give back in a way that is more aligned with my personality, I think I'll have like found a little more happiness probably.
Well, I'll say even the stuff you mentioned about the doubt, I think a lot of people resonate with. And it's interesting that you do, even though you're following a path that you felt you've been in control of for 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, but Finn, it's important to like recognize your agency in life and try and like take things where you want them to go, but things also just happen to you too, and you don't have complete control in your life, and you got to be able to roll with that. And so I don't know, like this is all just kind of fell into my lap, and I've embraced it more, I would say a lot more the last like 3 to 5 years. But it's all these little choices along the way. You're never like, I'm going to be a professional athlete, like I'm going to be an ambassador, influencer, whatever, it's just like opportunities come up. You try and like have a value system that you like base your decisions against. make a decision, go on, you keep going forward, I don't know. It's fluid.
That's a great point. Yeah. And like, just from my own personal circumstances, I'm probably the closest I've ever been in my life to living fully in alignment. But there are
Mm.
still days where I'm frustrated and I'm wanting. And I just came across this quote like a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Don't forget you have things that you once desired greatly. And it kind of brings me back to it.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a really good point. I'm glad, I mean, because it's just making me think about myself. And I totally agree that I am like as aligned as I've ever been in my life right now. But it's with the caveat that I'm always feeling a little like angsty about it all, So, yeah.
What are the expectations in your sponsorship contracts? Like you mentioned that you do a bunch of writing each day. Typically, you're like recapping like trip reports and races and stuff like that. And then you're also obviously your time on feet or your time on bike is significant as well. Yeah, like what do you, given that you're not always racing or you're not racing at the same frequency as like a Courtney DeWalter or a Jim,
Let's
what
be
are your
honest here, man.
expectations?
I don't race. Like, come
You don't,
on.
okay, you
I've
don't
done
race.
one race in 7 years. Um, yeah, no, I don't have racing requirements in my contracts,
That's
obviously.
awesome.
I mean, how would I be a sponsored athlete for the past 7 years? No, it has more to do with appearances. Some sponsors, there's very specific like deliverables with regard to, well, I mean, social media, basically, posting.
Yeah.
But someone like Sportiva, there's appearances written in. I think there's an implicit expectation that you're going to like be banging the stuff on the Instagram, but and I try to oblige that, but it's not explicit with Sportiva.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more basically I'm really open. If they pay me enough to where if they ask me to do something, I always say yes, basically.
Okay.
Like I try and be as available as possible for them because I'm extremely grateful for their support. But the other thing that's really cool and why I've really enjoyed working with Sportiva is that whenever I've proposed something to them, I don't think it's ever been shot down. Like they've always made it happen, So it takes initiative on my part, but yeah, I really appreciate that about that.
Given that your job is to be like really super present on social media platforms, and this is independent of the obligations of like La Sportiva and Ultimate Direction, other sponsors, do you feel like you've gotten sucked in at all to like your phone into these platforms and you're always checking them and responding, or are you able to keep them at an arm's length? Because you have a huge following, obviously, and I'm guessing that you have a ton of replies to your stories and your posts, and it must be incredibly distracting. So I'm fascinated.
I mean, I'm human, dude. Like I'm like, there's billions of dollars behind trying to get us addicted to these things. And like, I get sucked in for sure. But I try and be aware of it. And I try to like counter that.
Yeah.
Haley definitely helps with that for sure. But at the same time, it's silly, like how long it takes to craft an Instagram post too. But I mean, I almost as a policy, like I don't respond to DMs. Like, like I rarely go in there. Every now and then I'll jump in. It's like, oh, I wonder who's like messaged me lately, or like, what's in there. And
Yeah.
but that's not even a daily thing. That's probably like weekly. I'll check DMs. So,
But like your ability to like do like long-term deep focus work, like writing an article for La Sportiva or reading a book, like has that been interrupted at all? Like, do you have the same focus you had like 10 years ago before the advent of these platforms?
I don't think so. I think it's decreased for sure. That is a big part of why I try and keep reading like very front and center in my life, because it requires you to stay focused for an extended amount of time. If I'm just reading for an hour every morning, it's like, at least I can like pay attention to something for an hour, No, I'm susceptible to being distracted by all the scrolling and the, multiple tabs open and all that shit when you're trying to write. Like, yeah, it's terrible. It's like I have to like get it out of my system. And then you like get to a point where like, okay, now I can like do this, I can sit down and like get the task done. But I don't feel, for me, I do feel like it is just like a willpower thing. Like, it's like, no, I know that this is a problem. Just put that aside and do this. but I'm like most people, like nothing gets done if I don't have a deadline, you know? So, yeah.
And by the way, for the record, I promise none of these are gotcha questions. I'm just objectively
Okay.
I'm just objectively fascinated with like what it means to be like an endurance athlete in
Mhm.
2022. So like this next question, are you posting what you want to post on social media, or do you feel like it's an obligation most of the time? Or yeah,
Mm,
I guess I'm saying like, is it, do you feel like it's not an obligation, like the blog was not an obligation 10 years ago, or does it feel like gotta, punch the clock on Instagram today?
well, I have a number of contracts, um, like I said, that have, for lack of a better term, deliverables,
Yeah.
like posts that I have to do on a certain frequency. Um, and those are like, I mean, forced isn't the right word, but it's transactional. And I would not do those where I'm not getting paid for them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so I'm not sure what percentage that of my feed is that. I think it's not that high. I try and keep it fairly low, maybe 10%. Um, yeah, 1 out of every 10 posts, no more than two, I would say. So yeah, for the most part, the vast majority of shit I put on there is stuff that I'm like, uh, it's like genuine. It's coming from a place of like, I'm psyched about something, or I had an experience that, affected me in some way, and I feel compelled to share that.
This is probably an unfair question because I don't actually believe in the answer, but I'll ask it anyways. What do you see yourself doing like 5 years from now? Do you think that do you want to be in the same position, or do you want to be doing something different?
Oh God, 5 is the wrong time horizon for that. I would say 10 years from now, I would not want to be doing the same thing. 5 is a little gray. Um, I had this, so this kind of gets like to the root of my angst probably. Back in would have been 2008. So what am I? 25 years old. Kyle Skaggs and I are living together in Colorado Springs, and um, I can't remember. We were both just like so into the sport at the point. And, blogs were like huge, and
Yeah.
we were like in the public library. Neither of us had computers in the public library, like checking. I think it was the campus library actually, um, checking like blogs and stuff. And someone who was prominent then and still prominent now. Um, well, he was 40 then, and he was like going full time with the running thing. And Kyle was just like, damn, dude, if I'm 40 and I'm still doing this, like, that's going to be a sad day or something. And Kyle, like, he's an organic garlic farmer in southern New Mexico now. Me, I'm still doing the damn thing. Like, I don't know. It gives me pause on the daily. So, yeah.
Well, I feel like you have a lot of, again, I'm going to use the term influence. You have a lot of influences outside the sport, in that you're constantly reading. It sounds like you're constantly listening to other podcasts like NPR stuff. What do you think you would do as an alternative to this?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the problem. Like, this is what I'm psyched on. Like, or what this lifestyle enables is what I'm psyched on. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm gonna like keep prioritizing, I suppose. There's just so much to do, dude. Like, there's so many things I want to do still, and they require having like a high level of like freedom and flexibility in my day-to-day life.
I have a buddy who used to work in tech, and he struck it rich in like the crypto gold mine a couple of years back. And
Oh my God.
he sent me this screenshot of his calendar, and it was completely blank for the day. And he's like, the ultimate flex. Like, there was just nothing on his calendar, like totally empty. And
Yeah.
I can't say that. So I don't know. I don't think you're doing anything wrong.
Well, I mean, my calendar isn't blank, but it's blank enough to where like you know, I get to make decisions a lot of the time that are, what I want to do.
You mentioned earlier some things you'd like, or that you're stoked on with the sport, like a lot of these multi-day self-supported adventures. putting your critic hat on, is there anything you'd like to see changed about the sport?
Oh, of ultra running?
Yeah, like what's one thing that like you see happening in our sport right now? You're like, we got to change that.
Oh, damn, dude. God, I feel like I'm such a dud in terms of this interview because so here's my problem with that question, I guess, is I'm just 10 years ago, I would have been like, oh yeah, there needs like races need to be more technical, or there needs to be like 100-mile world championship, blah, blah, blah. And like, now I don't give a fuck, dude. It's just like, if there's like, no one is telling me how to run. I get to choose how I run. So why would I whine about something being a certain way? I have full choice over how I run. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm not asking about your running life. I mean, like for the sport at large.
Yeah, I know, I understand that, but it's like,
do you see any injustices being perpetrated on other ultra runners? And you're like,
oh, do I see, dude, people suffer injustices all the time. No, but it goes back to that whole what we were talking about earlier of like wanting people to adopt kind of like your worldview or philosophy,
yeah,
and like that is just not that's just not a motivation for me. So it's like I don't personally need to see any changes in this way. But if you're talking about injustices in the sport, like, yeah, there's the classic, it's just like, women, diversity, like it's increasingly a rich person's sport, when there's all kinds of injustices.
it wasn't a rich person sport when you started, or it was less of a rich
Well,
person sport?
as it's globalized, travel is expensive.
Yeah, okay.
Entry fees are expensive. As the sport is globalized, when it was more, we were just doing our thing, fat ass 50Ks and syrup bottles and that kind of, those sort of urban myths of, I don't know, the 80s and 90s in ultra running.
Yeah.
You weren't concerned about like, oh God, like Chamonix is the it place to be every August. Like I need to get over there. Like, how do I save up the pennies? Like that's a huge barrier to entry if like you think you need to be in Chamonix in August,
Yeah.
It's like plane tickets aren't cheap. Travel
Dude,
in general isn't cheap, so yeah.
So there's something you want to see changed about the sport? Like
Travel less. I don't care though, man. Like I don't have any strong feelings about this. Like no, but I would like to see, like, if you're going to like consider yourself a part of a community, you want that community to feel equitable,
Yes.
So I think it is important that races are offering as much opportunity as possible to like level the playing field, and like, races like High Lonesome, we're trying to like get as many women as our men, like that's great, like that stuff, but it's not but that's like deciding that you're like interested in racing, I guess. It's like I said, I get to choose how I run any on any given day. Like there was like, I would say 10 years ago, amongst myself and my friends, there was like, oh, like you need to have like everyone was so inspired by what was going on with sky running in Europe and technical courses and having via ferratas and all this shit. And it's like, I can just go do that. Why does it need to be in a race? Who cares? Like I don't know, like we do that here in Boulder, and it's so rad. We're just like a bunch of friends get together and try really hard on a given technical route, and it's like that's something I'm excited about in this sport. That's not ultra running though. These are like sub 1 hour efforts, so I don't know.
Well, dude, one issue that I take with our community is everybody sort of tiptoes around disagreements. And I love that you can just be like, Finn, fuck that question. That's a terrible question. Like you have a clear philosophical line in the sand.
Well, that's not a bad question. It's just a question that I'm like personally not interested in, I guess, maybe is a better way to put it.
Well, anyways, I respect it.
Okay.
What do I want to ask next? Well, going back to maybe what you might do from a racing standpoint, either later this year or sometime in the relative near future, are there any American 100-milers that are top of mind for you right now? Like, would you ever do a race, for example, like the Wasatch 100, which is in my backyard?
Yeah, I mean, Wasatch is one of those classics, that given like titanium limbs, I would absolutely sign up for Wasatch. Having said that, there's really only one, and everyone knows it. It's Hard Rock. and I've gotten in twice, never lined up.
What years did you get in?
2012 and 2015, I think.
Okay.
Definitely 2012. I can't remember. I think the second time was 2015. 2012 not lining up was a huge mistake. It is like the one regret of my ultra running career, I think. Um, I had a shin injury. You get a full refund if you pull out before June 1st, I think.
Okay.
June 1st, I felt way too injured, but by the time a month later, basically the race rolled around, I was ripping shape. I was in really good shape, and like really wish I had been able to race that day. 2015, I had a stress fracture in my tibia. I couldn't do it.
Okay.
So yeah.
But there's a lot of hoops that you have to jump through, obviously, to get back into that race.
I know, and it's
Like you'd have to race a
it's a,
Wasatch, for example, to get back in.
yeah, bear, whatever. Yeah, exactly. Which, yeah, I don't know. I guess, when I have it the last couple months, like I just had, or it's like all this uncertainty about my Achilles again. It's so hard for me to plan multi-years out a race schedule, So I don't know. Maybe one day I'll go and ITT the Hard Rock course just for my own personal edification, just to see it in one push,
I thought what Walmsley did there was kind of cool, like that. Yeah, just bringing that to a more public audience. Like, I'm going to go do this during the pandemic. That was pretty sweet. He didn't finish.
That was in 2020, right?
2020, yeah.
Yeah. I was surprised to see him do that. Yeah, it's too bad he didn't finish, but yeah.
But you might do that. That would be something that would be appealing to you one summer.
Maybe when I'm 40. Yeah, I don't know if I get like. Here's the thing though. Like, one of the reasons I've ran Leadville last year is like it's flat. Like the Achilles is way more amenable to flat terrain than it is to vertical, and Hard Rock's got a lot of vert,
Yeah.
But I mean, if you'd asked me 2 years ago that I would have been able to run Leadville last year, I'd have been like, heck no, So who knows? Things could keep improving.
How important? I know we just talked about UTMB. How important is that race to you? Because I know I guess you may, to a fan, have unfinished business there. Like, are you interested in going back there one day and
it's the Hard Rock? Yeah, it's a Hard Rock conundrum in two ways. One, it's a lot of vertical. Two, does anyone know how to get into that race anymore? Like, what's going on with that? Like, there's a lot of hoops to get in there now. It's like we have to run all of these races if you want a chance of doing this race. And having said that, obviously UTMB is an incredible experience. I did it twice. I only finished once. I think it's I'm so grateful for all those opportunities, like traveling abroad for weeks at a time. It's hugely enriching to my life. In unfinished business, sure. If I still had the physical capability, absolutely, that would be. But man, it just feels so tenuous on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, UTMB, to me, all the hoopla around UTMB does not disinspire me. Like, I think that's fine. You just have to recognize, like, that's like, I think a sport, it's fine to have that in a sport, but it's just cool that Hard Rock exists too, or that like your local unsanctioned underground, whatever, exists as well. Like the sport is big enough to have all these different styles of events. But I'm not like sitting here trying to figure out how to get into UTMB, I guess.
Earlier in the conversation, we were talking about Western states. Are there any other projects or races running related that you're considering for this summer?
Yeah, I've always got things, man. They tend towards what we were talking about at the beginning, though, with regard to like kind of like technical backcountry type missions. There's so many inspiring lines. One of the best ones is right here in the backyard. Goes along the Continental Divide from Longs Peak to Arapahoe Peak in the Indian Peaks Wilderness. That one's always like in the back of my mind. And it's more doable on my Achilles because it's a ton of like hiking and scrambling, which is just like a lot easier than trying to like run uphill or so. Yeah, something like that. But I don't know. It's bad form to like pre-spray about stuff. like,
How come? How
like,
come?
uh, how come? It's like hype with no substance.
Okay.
It's like, that term comes from the climbing world. Spray is, it's like unsolicited advice, unsolicited hype. So if you are talking about something you're going to do, you're just making hype about nothing. It's like nothing's happened. You haven't done shit. So why talk about it? Like, I think it's helpful. I think it's useful to share the experience afterwards.
Yeah.
And I think that's important even. But to talk about it beforehand, it's just words. Like, it's all fluff. There's no substance to it.
Gotcha. Cool. Doing a little bit of speculating for a second. I thought this would be a fun topic to talk about. How do you think your career might have gone differently if the 2008 Western States 100 had not been canceled?
Huh. I don't know about my career, but I would have won that day for sure.
Really?
100%, dude. No, like, I did a 260-mile week leading up to that race. Like, no shade on Hal Kerner, but I was a better runner than Hal that year for sure. And he was like, he won in 07 and 09. So he was clearly like the class of the field then. I've always respected Hal a huge amount. Like his 2012 Hard Rock win, just like classic. So good. And impressive. But 2008, I was ready. I mean, I ran what did I run that spring to get into the race? American River 50.
Okay.
I think I had like the second fastest time ever there, and the fastest time, the dude was the 100K American record holder at the time. And that's a flat course. Like my marathon, that race, we went through the marathon 3 minutes slower than my marathon PR. Like it's not my. Anyways, I was fit, is what I'm saying, going into that race, and I was halfway across Nevada, and Eric Skaggs, who was going to pace me there, like calls me and is like, "Yeah, the race is off, dude. You can go home." So yeah. But how it would have affected my career, I don't know. Who knows? I don't think like winning a race. I was already sponsored by New Balance. Within 18 months of that race, they were sponsoring me in a way that allowed me to like have it be full time basically. So yeah.
Like one thing I think about is, would you have gone back to Western States in 2010, and would Unbreakable have been filmed as a result? Or like, would you have gone and like done other projects earlier? Like, would you have gone to UTMB because you had just taken care of business at Western States and it was no longer appealing to you?
Yeah, 2008 was the first time I ever heard of UTMB, because I remember, so Killian won it that year, first year he won it. And Carl and Scott and Hal had gone over the year before. So like it was on my radar. I was like, oh, there's this race over here. And everyone's like, and that was the year, 2008 was the year that Kyle Skaggs blew up Hard Rock. And everyone that came back from UTMB that year and was like, there's this kid who's like better than Kyle. It's like, shut up. Like, what are you talking about? And they're talking about Killian, So I don't know, maybe I would have gone UTMB earlier, but I think if I had won Western in 08, I would have gone back in 09, in 010. Maybe I'd have been a 3-time winner, dude. Who knows? No, 2009. I mean, because see, this is the butterfly effect that is silly, because it's like the only reason I didn't go in 2009 is because I had a knee injury. Of course, I mean, I'm always injured, dude. So yeah.
I have a co-host, and we do a specific episode on Ultrarunning's great what ifs. And like the last one we did was what would have happened to our sport if Walmsley had never missed the turn at mile 93 back in 2016. It's just fun to game out.
That was the first year in it, 2016. Huh?
2016, yeah. And like, for example, if he had won that year, if he had set the course record, would he have just like immediately gone and focused on UTMB and maybe won it earlier? Or, would he have been like, oh, ultra running's a joke, I'm going to go and run the marathon instead because I just crushed like 3 of our top races in a row. Anyways, it's
question.
fun to game out.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's funny. That was the year he got lost and didn't he finished that year though. So yeah, that's interesting.
What ultimately made you choose Boulder as your training base?
So I lived in Colorado Springs for 7, 8 years. And then yeah, short stint in Bozeman, 5 or 6 months in Ashland. I was working at Health Store actually. But I mean, I went to school in Colorado Springs. I wanted to be in the mountains. So Colorado, I wanted to be in Colorado. Grad school here, and then I just stayed because I got like interested in all the things that Boulder has to offer. You know, I mean, I still see myself like maybe moving at some point.
Seriously.
Yeah, dude, the housing's impossible here. It's
Yeah.
like, I mean, I make enough money as a full-time athlete, but I can't afford $1 million house.
Dude, come move to Salt Lake.
Hmm. Uh,
Dude, let's talk about it. What do you like and not like about Salt Lake having been here?
oh man, I don't know if this is a good topic actually. What I like about Salt Lake is the Wasatch is incredible. It's like it's a magnificent mountain range, and it's the like. I mean, Salt Lake's a big city, and it's right there. Like you're, um, I think a lot of people would see that. I'm probably getting to a point in my life where I actually see that as a negative rather than a positive. I'm just becoming more hermit-like and recluse in my old age. What I like about the Wasatch is the rock is good. There's good climbing there. There's similar to the Northern Front Range. There's quite good alpine scrambling. You get up around Lone Peak. I mean, everything, Little Cottonwood, all that stuff. Salt Lake has the goods for sure. The air quality is, you can't do it. Like it's so hot. I mean, it's hot in Boulder too in the summer, but it's really hot in Salt Lake in the summer. And then in the winter, you got your freaking just like smog layer all winter long. That'd be tough. Proximity to the desert would be cool. I think some kind of like like support network, friend circle friends. I don't know. Yeah, you develop doing these other sports in the mountains, which I know there's a huge community in the Wasatch, but climbing and skiing specifically, you need partners, and it's really tough finding like-minded partners.
Oh, dude, you got Jason and Andy DeRay, legends.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah, and I mean, I've done some climbing with Jason actually. I don't think I've ever actually met Andy, but we messaged plenty. No, those guys get after it for sure. They're way better skiers than me, but yeah, I mean, but that's exactly they have the right mindsets. Like absolutely. No, those guys are great. Yeah, like it exists for sure, but I don't know. You get stuck somewhere and like it's home.
Yeah.
I'm not. I really don't like this concept of like greener pastures. Like always looking for the better thing. It's like, what's wrong with where you are? Like make it what you want it to be. Like, I mean, it's impossible to complain about a place like Boulder if what you're interested in is outdoor recreation. I don't know. Those are my answers.
No, I love it. I dig it. Maybe we'll sell you at a later date. But that's good. That's good philosophy there, the greener pasture stuff. Let's get into these sort of miscellaneous lightning round questions. The first being, what is something you used to believe, either in running or some other area of life, that you have recently changed your mind about, and why?
I'm gonna go with. I think I just wrote about this for Ultrarunning magazine actually. Um, yeah, I'm gonna go with Nebraska not being good for running. Nebraska is great for running. If what you're into is running, where I grew up is perfect place to be a runner. If like just like the act of running, soft surface, rolling terrain, forever. Doesn't have altitude, but who cares? There's no mountains there to run anyways. Why do you need altitude? Like I don't know.
I love it.
So yeah, and but part of that is like just like kind of like the full circle of becoming an adult, I guess. Is like, you're at home, you're a teenager, you're like, I gotta get out of this place, like sucks. Go to the mountains, spend 20 years in the mountains, grow up, mature, and realize that like where you came from is actually super important, and not as bad as you thought it was when you were a teenager.
Have there been any failures or apparent failures during your running career or otherwise that have actually set you up for later success?
Oh, I mean, success can be defined so fluidly. I think the obvious one to me is when I broke my leg in 2011. If I hadn't done that, I never would have gone down this multi-sport avenue without some kind of catalyst like that. Uh, it it just completely shifted my mindset of like what was a meaningful and fulfilling way to like use my body and be in the mountains. Like before that injury, I didn't even like I sort of abhorred hiking. It was just like, no, I'm a runner. I'm gonna run this hill. I'm gonna run every step, and like that just like changed my perception. I'm like, oh yeah, like hiking is a totally valid way to go uphill. Um, and then that progression to scrambling, progression to climbing, uh, further injuries led to the whole cycling and skiing. So yeah, I would say that kind of thing. But in the moment, it was like a tragedy. It happened in early June. I was out the entire summer. It's like crutches the whole summer. Uh, yeah, it sucked. It like precipitated me like dropping out of grad school at the last minute. But whatever.
What was the last piece of art? Could be a book, a podcast, a TV show, painting you came across that has made you feel something, and what did it make you feel?
Oh man. The last one. This podcast is called I think I actually made a post about it. 60 songs that explain the 90s. Are you familiar with this?
No.
Yeah, oh dude, I don't know. So maybe you'll be into it. I don't know how into music you are, but so it's on Spotify. It's a Spotify exclusive podcast. It's called 60 Songs That Explain the 90s. And the host is this guy, this music critic, Rob Harvilla. And his writing is incredible. It's self-deprecating, it's humorous, it's poignant. And one of the last episodes in like this first season was for the song Killing in the Name Of by Rage Against the Machine. I don't know if you were ever a Rage Against the Machine fan or if you are a Rage Against the Machine fan, but it's great and you should listen to it. Go to Spotify, search 60 Songs That Explain the 90s. I guess what's great about it, he starts off with the Ice-T song Cop Killer and talking about its cultural influence and how and then like juxtapositioning that to Killing in the Name Of as like basically a cop killer song that isn't explicitly about killing cops the way that Cop Killer is. And how that gives it its strength, that like the whole the whole thrust of that song is fuck you, I don't do what you tell me. And it's just like how cathartic that can be for anyone because they can project it onto whatever their like grievance is, right? But he just does it in a very like articulate, poignant way with the current events of the world. I recommend it. The second half of each episode is an interview with someone about the song. Whatever that can be thrown away on this one. But the first half, the first 40 minutes or whatever, definitely worth a listen. But you should, well, you're into it, man. You definitely check out this podcast. It's not just this episode, but the whole series. I don't know. How old are you, Finn?
I'm 30.
Okay. So like the 90s theme will be like, you're just like a touch young for it maybe because you were like born in 1990, but I think you probably know 90s music. Yeah. So
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Last question. If you could put a message on a billboard for all to see, what would it say and why?
Oh man, I considered asking you not to ask this one because it's gonna be one of those ones that like,
it's coming back full circle. This is influence right here.
I know, but this is the problem with it, man. Is like here's my problem with that question. I think it's more interesting to talk about why you don't like a question than just like axe it behind the scenes.
No, let's go.
Yeah. I guess like right now, culture is like so polarized, so divisive. It's so just like at the extremes, right? And so my response to that is like trying to understand that the world is a complicated and nuanced place and that there aren't clear-cut answers about most issues. And putting a slogan on a billboard is reducing something to like it's the exact opposite of nuance. You know what I'm saying? So like trying to like all that does is, as like, you know, me as the interviewee, it's like I'm supposed to come up with something clever, you know, that, or like something that will like make people like, oh, like that guy, he thinks deeply, or he's, you know, he has wit or something, you know. And it's like I'm just so tired of that kind of shit. Like I don't want to perform that game, you know. It's like why do you host an hour-long podcast instead of just like why do you go to that trouble instead of just like taking pot shots on Twitter, you know? It's like because things require a conversation and differing points of views and hashing it out, and not just like, oh, here's the answer, you know, half a dozen words on a billboard. I don't know. Plus, I'm not trying to influence, man. Like it's just like not.
Dude, you can decline. You can abstain. This would be the first ever abstention from the question, which would be awesome.
I'm abstaining, man. Sorry.
I love it, dude. This has been awesome. We came here to talk about running, but I feel like we ended up talking about more interesting stuff, which is always good. And can't thank you enough for your time. Yeah, this has been great. If anyone wants to follow any particular project you're working on, can you give them the details here?
Yeah, I mean, Instagram's probably the easiest way. I feel like that's the mouthpiece for everything anymore. I'm at my name at Anton Krupicka. Yeah, I mean, if you like pictures of mountains and bicycles and rocks, probably the place. And to my girlfriend, I guess. Go ahead and follow me.
Hell yeah. Thanks again, man.
Yeah, thanks, man.